Did you know Katie's Dreamland is actually based on Lightwater Valley, a real park in Yorkshire, England, which makes it the first real park to appear in the game, although it isn't an exact recreation as we see with other real parks such as the Six Flags parks. I'll make reference to that during the video, but focusing on the scenario itself, we need to get the park value up to 200,000 in 3 years. The park value starts just under 129,000, so we need to add around 70,000 to the value. The layout of the park's main coaster, Storm, is interesting, twisting around a narrow extension of the main park, locking in an area which we don't actually own. This is a recreation of the Ultimate, which opened in 1991 as the then world's longest roller coaster, but was demolished in 2023. That explains the unique layout, but if you want to, you can purchase the land between Storm's track. So first off, I took a look at the rides we already had and made some minor adjustments, things like inspection times, pricing, minimum wait times at stations, that kind of thing. Then it was on to some basic park management, hiring and setting patrol areas for handymen and mechanics, and adding an information kiosk close to the entrance. Hungry guests led me to add 2 pizza stalls, which is one of my favourite food stalls given the good profit made on each slice. The park already has 3 good coasters, but I haven't added anything new yet. So, as is almost traditional for me, let's place a mango muncher down near the exit. The only water ride we have is the Swans on the lake, so my first custom build will be a log flume. This park has plenty of land to build into, but I'll save the larger spaces for roller coasters and get the log flume in near the go-karts, with a station one side and most of the track the other side of the racetrack. As go-karts are on top of a hill, I'll use some underground sections for the flume, and can actually have the second drop going through the middle of the go-karts. This isn't a particularly long track, but 2 large drops, some underground sections, plenty of nearby scenery, well, trees, and the close proximity of the go-karts should give me some good stats. And sure enough, just over 5.5 gives me high excitement. There is so much space in the park for adding new rides, but for each custom build, I'll want to add some static rides to keep variety for guests. Twists could go just about anywhere, but not wanting to take space away from potential bigger rides later, I took it into a corner near the log flume. As I mentioned earlier, the Storm is based on the real-life Ultimate ride, which has now been demolished at Lightwater Valley, but you can check out a quick video where I discuss the Storm as Ultimate's replica. On with the park though, and let's get a haunted house in to increase the amount of gentle rides, and as with Twist, I'll tuck it somewhere which won't take space from any future larger rides. And then the same with the merry-go-round. So I've been saving space for some bigger rides, so let's build one. I'm starting this looping coaster above the entrance to the underground Runaway plumber, which, by the way, was Raptor Attack at Lightwater Valley. This scenario is about adding park value, and while smaller rides naturally help and increase the guest count, it's bigger and newer rides which will have the biggest impact on park value. So this looping coaster should become my biggest contributor yet, at least of the rides that I have built myself. The Runaway plumber is built underground outside of park limits, meaning we also have construction rights above ground here. So I'll make use of that for this coaster. It's a turn and chain lift hill from the station, not too dissimilar to the start of Storm. After another turn, we go into a steep drop, a small incline, and then into a vertical loop via a helix. Anybody who has ever played Rollercoaster Tycoon will have sent a track back through a vertical loop, which is what I will do here, and on most looping coasters I build. It turns downwards out of the loop and then climbs to come back around the outside of the vertical loop, back into park-owned land, and then we have a hill over the path to Runaway plumber before returning to the station. So, let's take a ride. Oh dear, not enough speed for that vertical drop, so I'll make the initial drop taller in the hope of making it, but the fact that there is uneven terrain and I'm relying on construction rights means I've also had to take a wider turn. Moment of truth. No, still just too slow. That wide turn didn't help, so let's try adding some booster track instead. And success, so here come the stats. Back to the static rides, and in goes Space Rings, and I already want another coaster, so let's do a Wooden Wild Mine. I'm building this with elements underground, close to the path and over the miniature railway. Super speeding through the build, let's join the test ride at the top of that chain lift hill. So we got a rollback right at the end there, so I'll swap that out for a chain lift hill, and these are the stats we are left with. The steep drops and inclines often make these among the more intense types of coaster in the game, but while this might be too much for some guests, others are going to love it. We already have a miniature Runaway in the centre of the park, but as this is a large space with lots of walking for guests, I'll add a front to back chairlift with its second station close to the storm. It's been a busy year for the park, and I'm ready to go with the next new coaster, which I'll build as a stand-up coaster in this good-sized area to the right of the park. Climbing out over the miniature Runaway, it turns and drops before corkscrewing across the path. A climb back takes us towards the park boundary, where a steep drop guides the track into a vertical loop. A half loop and corkscrew inverts the ride again before it bends around the first loop, snaking below and then over its own track, and then it's back under the tracks for one last loop around before heading underground to get back to the station. I'm pretty sure this is going to have a strong excitement rating, but will it be too intense? There's one way to find out. Yes, way too intense, and that's also killing the excitement rating. Time for a rethink. After reviewing where those vertical Gs were spiking, I took out the first coaster and reduced the height of the drop as we didn't need quite so much speed, and that managed to balance things out better. It's still an intense coaster, but it's ready to welcome guests looking for a more thrilling ride. Flipping to the other end of the intensity scale, I'll add a Ferris wheel alongside the park boundary. And by the way, that stand-up coaster has earned me the award for park with the best roller coasters, a great sign that we are on track with the park value target. I've carved out an opening under that intense stand-up coaster for a much more gentle maze ride, and I also landscaped near to the Swans to add a Dodgems ride. The newer the rides, the more they contribute to park value, so anything built this year is going to really help. Speaking of park value, I am flying towards being at 200,000 by the end of this year, as long as nothing goes wrong and I don't remove too many rides. I shouldn't see a drop in that current valuation of 258. I'll keep the new rides coming though, as research provides them to me. A swinging inverted ship is one of the more intense thrill rides, so can sit close to the gentle Swans and Dodgems. I can also squeeze an observation tower between the stand-up coaster. I struggled with a custom toboggan ride in Three Monkeys, so until I've practiced a bit more, I'll build a custom toxic toboggan instead, squeezing it onto the hill close to the haunted house. Into July and I get the always popular motion simulator from Research, and I also recently had the Launch 3 Fall come available, so let's add a basic one underground near the park entrance which will shoot riders up above ground. I'm on a roll with these new static rides, so 3D Cinema went up as soon as I got the Research notification, and to keep me busy until October I've decided to add a custom dinghy slide. I've got so many rides in this part of the park that it's kind of hard to see where this ride goes after shooting straight underground from the station, so I'll skip the construction stage and take you straight to the test ride and stats. And that was me done in terms of new rides. The last few weeks I just kept a check on things, added a few gardens and other decorations, and then it was the end of year 3 and a comfortable win in Katie's Dreamland.